Welcome. In this video I'm going to show you how you can find inversions of chords on the guitar. Chord inversions are iterations of a chord where the chord tones, the individual notes that make up the chord, are in a different order. It actually officially means that the bottom note is a different note than the root, or whatever note is on the bottom is defining the inversion of the chord. But a lot of times they're thought of as actually just a permutation of the order of whatever notes are in the chord. So if you have three notes in a triad, a 1, a 3, and a 5, or a root, a third, and a fifth, and that root is on the bottom, if you throw that root over and put it on the top, and we're going to do this on the guitar in a second, then you have an order now that is 3, 5, 1, the third, the fifth, and the root. And now the third is on the bottom. So this is the first inversion. It doesn't have to be an exact flip of that order. It could just be that you throw the third on the bottom. The bass player just plays the third, regardless of what's happening on top, and that is considered first inversion. But we're going to do a pretty systematic way to look at it on the fretboard so you can really clearly find inversions of almost any chord form that you're used to playing or wanting to explore. If you take the third of the chord now and flip that on the top from the iteration that we had a second ago, and the fifth is on the bottom, now we have the fifth and then the root and then the third. Now we have second inversion. Cool. It's a little confusing sometimes. Calling first inversion means saying first inversion means that the third is on the bottom, and it can get confusing because you want to say almost it's third inversion because the third is on the bottom, or first inversion because the 1 is on the bottom, but that's not quite right. The root being on the bottom can just be called root position, and then the first time you invert it, when the third is the lowest note, that's the first inversion. The second time you invert it when the fifth is the lowest note, that's the second inversion. If there's a 7 in the chord and you have a root, a third, a fifth, and a 7, if the 7 is on the bottom, then that's third inversion of the chord. So there can even be fourth inversions of chords where the 9 is on the bottom, and sometimes people will call them that. But we're just going to do triads and seventh chords here. So it's really quite simple. If we take any chord, then we need to be able to identify what chord tones are in that chord. So that alone, the fact that we have to do that is really valuable already. It's going to make you think on the fretboard. What is what? What am I playing? What notes am I playing? So I'm going to give us several examples here. So let's go ahead and take a D chord, something that a lot of us are comfortable with, familiar with, understand, playing a D chord. And we'll do this with several common chords and then some seventh chords as well. So again, first step is we have to identify what is what. Okay, so we have to find that. Taking the time to figure it out on your own, if you have any tools or knowledge to do that, is what I recommend, rather than looking it up or check somewhere where you had it written down. Having it take longer because you're really trying to investigate for yourself. Where's the root, and how can I figure that out? What do I know on the fretboard already that can allow me to search for that? And even if that took you like an hour, that's like amazing study time, practice time, much better than if you just saw a diagram of it and were like, oh yeah, and you're reminded, right? Because it shows you the tools and a map for how you can figure it out. It's kind of like showing your work in math, and it means you really know it and understand it, and that will get quicker until you do just have it. And so that's really more valuable time spent. I mean, it's worth putting time into finding that stuff. So, but let's say you took that time and you found it, or you know that information already. Well, it's a D chord, so we know D is the root. This open D is the root. This note here on the second string, third fret, is the octave of the root, so that's also the root. And then we would need to find the other ones. This top note on the top string is the third. 1, 2, 3. If you counted from 1, you can find the numbers from anything. And that leaves this note being the 5, the third string. Second fret is the 5. If we counted from 1, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, we get to 5. So we have 1, 5, 1, 3. Cool. Step 1, phase 1, identifying everything. We're doing that. Got it. Now, as far as having which notes of those are we going to be able to invert, it's actually not going to be all of them. And with every chord, we don't want to just use every note that we're playing. So if you're playing a big E major chord, we can't just invert that whole thing. We have to take a little piece of it, a little piece of the complete chord. So back to D, the piece, and I said piece of the complete chord, but really just find a place where you have the complete chord, the 1, the 3, and the 5 somewhere, okay? So in this case, we can do two versions of it. Let's eliminate this root that is the open D and just take this shape up here. 5, 1, and 3. We have the complete chord now. So we're wanting to eliminate doubled notes, right? We had two roots. We got rid of one of those roots, so we just have the 1, the 3, and the 5, the kind of essential notes that we need without anything being doubled up. And now, because we know this theory of having found where's 1, where's 3, where's 5, just along each string, this is more kind of fretboard finding, fretboard mapping, where you're going to have to think through things, and it's so worth the time, even if you feel like you're not playing notes, to think through this if it's challenging for you, and find these notes. You will know the fretboard so much better. We're going to take each string and say, okay, well, this bottom note is the 5, and 5 is going to go up. Every note is going to go up to whatever the next chord tone available, next closest chord tone is. So 5 is always going to go up to 1 if we're on a triad. 1 on the same string is going to go up to 3. 3 on the same string that it was on is going to go up to 5. Okay, so you just go up to wherever the closest chord tone is along that same string, and boom, you have the inversion. So 5 is going to go up to 1, which happens to be here. You can kind of hear that sound there. 5, 1, 5, 1, 5, 6, 7, 1. That's how we find it. I say in so many videos, I talk about the structure of the major scale because we're always going to be needing that and referencing that back. If you know the structure of the major scale really well, just the structure of it, we're not even talking about note names here. We're just saying the structure of the major scale: 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Half step between 3, 4, half step between 7 and 1. If you know that well, you'll find any of these no problem, because I know this is 5. I know 5 to 6 is a whole step. I know 6 to 7 is a whole step. And I know 7 and 1 is a half step. So I found 5, 6, 7, 1 to go 5 to 1. So if you know that, it's going to force you to kind of think and count in that way. Or you might just see it. You might just say, well, here's 5, where's 1? But if you see it, it's because you've kind of worked your way up to that through this way that I'm talking about doing by knowing the major scale so well. So the next one is the root here on string 2, and the root is going to go to 3. So because 1, 2, 3, well, 2 is not in the chord, 3 is the next chord tone. Okay, awesome. If you know your major scale, 1, 2, 3. Okay, so 1 to 2 is a whole step, 2 to 3 is a whole step, as we talked about, and there it is. Now we have these two notes right here. Got it. 3 was on the top string in this chord, and we know that 3, okay, 4 is not a chord tone. 5, yes, that's a chord tone, that's the next one. 3 and 4 are half step apart, so you skip that, you go up to 5. 4 to 5 is a whole step in the major scale structure. So here it is, here's that inversion. D, D, complete D chord, complete D chord. Okay, 5, 1, 3, 1, 3, 5. Okay, great. Okay, if you throw that any other notes in there, you can just play with these as a structure. Cool, gives you a little bit of motion to play with. Let's do it again. I'll do it quickly for the next inversion. There's only going to be 3 versions, 3 inversions, I guess. The root position is not necessarily an inversion, but there's going to be 3 shapes that we get to total because there's only 3 notes, right? So you only have a version of it with the root on the bottom, one with the 3rd on the bottom, and one with the 5 on the bottom. And then if you keep doing that, you'll get back to the original shape. So we're going to do that. Here's the root. I'm going to do it quickly now because you get the idea. Here's the root. It's going to go up to 3 on that same string. Here's the 3. It's going to go up to 5 on that same string. Here's the 5. It's going to go up to 1 on that same string. Ah, very nice. It's exactly the sound that we're looking for. Technique-wise, if you want to, and just to visually have a sense of the fretboard well, definitely practicing just bouncing between them is a great way to work on it once you see that. Okay? If I do it again, 3 to 5 on the same string, 5 to 1 on that same string, and then 1 to 3, and we get that shape that we started with, but an octave up. Okay, it can be some nice accompaniment, can at least just be theoretically like helping you see what's going on the fretboard a little more. I think it's very practical and very useful in a lot of ways too. It could be hard when you're first mapping stuff out to really feel like, how am I really going to use this in a way that sounds cool to me? It depends on what you're doing, you know. If you are a classical guitarist and you just want to see that, so you see it when it comes up in a piece you're playing, that's very useful for that reason. But if you're a songwriter, you're learning that for very different reasons, and the way that it's applicable is going to be maybe that you want to switch up a voicing or get a different note on the melody on the top. You could be writing accompaniment parts for strings, and you're thinking on the fretboard, and you want to say, okay, this player's going to play this note, this player's going to play this note. So many applications, so many reasons. It's really just knowing music, knowing the structure, how it works, but seeing it really clearly on the fretboard. Certainly for improvisation, it's massively beneficial, because if you're working with scale forms, there's that scale there. I'm playing with the scale, but there's that inversion there, that shape. If you're playing any single note stuff, you're kind of dancing around those. So you're seeing the chord tones. Great, so we did it on D. Let's go ahead and do it on, well, let's stay on D, because I want to show you how you can do it with a totally different shape. Okay, so now I'm going to take away this root and keep the open D root. Okay, so we still have 1, 5 on the third string, and then 3 on the top string. Okay, so we eliminated our extra root, and we're going to do the same thing again now with this other shape. 1, 5, 3, nothing happening on string 2. Let's give it a try. So 1's going to go to 3. And I'm going to kind of just go through it quickly, because you know what you're supposed to look for now with each of these. 1's going to go to 3 on that same string. 5 is going to go to 1. Cool. I like that sound a lot. 3, 1. Okay. And then we have 3 is going to go to 5. Love that. Love this inversion of 3 chords. This is very pianistic to see chords in this way, where you're going to start to be able to connect chords with what's called voice leading. If you know inversions, then you don't have to jump to some shape. You can say, where's my closest iteration of that next chord that I want? That'll be for another video, another time to do that. Right now, I just want to show you how you can start finding them at all and think this way theoretically. So, okay, 3 is going to go to 5. Okay, 1 is going to go to 3. Okay, 5 is going to go to 1. Okay, so bit of a stretch. And some chords you'll find maybe technically much easier, and some not as easy. You don't have to feel like they need to be ready in at your fingertips all the time. It's not about that. It's more about knowing how to find them. And then some you might find useful, some you might not. But being able to see it is kind of our goal right now. 5, moving on, 5 is going to go to 1. Okay, 3 is going to go to 5. And then 1 is going to go to 3. Oh, well, there it is. That original shape that we had, 1, 5, 3. I love that voicing. Cool. So let's do the same voicing along the 5th string. We'll do it off C. 1, 5, 3. 1, 5, 3. Skipping the 3rd string. String 5, string 4, string 3. Fret 3, fret 5, fret 5. Okay. Now I'm going to go 1 goes to 3, 5 goes to 1. And 3 goes to 5. Okay. That's still just a C chord. 3, 1, 5. A lot of times if I'm on the inversion, I'm going to see it as part of maybe like just a normal chord shape where the root is somewhere nearby, even though I'm not playing that root. So I can see the 3 is related to this root. I can see the root here is an octave from here, and I can see that this 5 is the 5th from that root. Just saying that the way we're seeing it, we're not always necessarily, still seeing it from over here. We're getting there, and then we're seeing it in relation to a root nearby somewhere if possible. Okay, next inversion here, we have 3 goes to 5, 1 goes to 3, and then 5 goes to 1. Let it take time for you, though. Really let it take time. If you don't see where those things are quickly, count them out slowly, little by little, one by one. There's so many chord forms that you could do this with. Don't feel like, oh, I'm going to learn them all now. Just know that process, right? So if you feel like exploring it here and there when you're writing or improvising or practicing or wanting to uncover something that feels like you're you're missing, or you have a gap in how you're seeing the fretboard, then you have the tool to then find it. So much better than memorization, just memorizing a bunch of shapes, right, from like a chord book or something. Like, oh, okay, I'm going to try to remember all these. Seeing how you can get there quickly is way better. I almost never played this, but I just know easily how to see it and get there from that process. I'll actually often play, if I want that sound, this is 5 here, I'll play the 5 down here, same exact chord form, but that's just maybe a more common way that it's played, because it's a little bit more like a C shape that we're used to. But in any case, playing it like this is fine. It helps us kind of see it and have that process. So next, let's do a 7 chord. Okay, I'm gonna do, let's do C major 7, 1, 5, 3, like we had before, and I'm gonna take this middle finger and put it down on the fret in between those, fret 4, in between the other fingers, and that is our 7. 1, 5, 7, 3. Get a whole different flavor now. Okay, so if I take that inversion that I got before, 3, 1, 5, and I take that 7 and I say that has to go to 1, oh, well, I gotta throw that in the mix now. So it's gonna be this shape. That's gonna go to 1. Oh, a couple things changed. So I had 3, 5, 3, 1, 5. Well, let's actually start back here, because now I need to change the 1 going to 7 instead. So I better just do it in the order that I want to show you here. 1 to 3 as before, but now 5 to 7 instead of 5 to 1, okay? So now 7 to 1s. And this is so cool with a 7th chord, because now we get a half-step connection between 7 and 1, and then 3 to 5. C major 7, but this kind of creepy, gorgeous voicing of it with the 7 and the 1 half step apart. If someone plays a C major chord and you're in the key of C major and you throw this over it, it's gonna feel great, because that 7 is in the key. You're just turning it into a major 7 chord, and then you're doing an inversion of it where it's just kind of crunchy together. Not quite crunchy, almost floaty, but just with that half step in there. Okay, so onward. 3 is going to go to 5, 7 is going to go to 1, 1 is going to go to 3. Kind of an E shape there, very nice. But then 5 is going to go to 7. This shape I don't actually recommend. Look at how I have to, that's not great for the technique and for the wrist, but it is one that exists just to be able to see. 5, 1, 3, 7. It is nice to have the 7 on top. That voicing happens to be the same exact notes as this, so here's a much easier way to play that. So, but still cool to work these out. 5 is going to go to 7, 1 is going to go to 3, 3 is going to go to 5, and 7 is going to go to 1. This is not used very much because the 7's on the bottom. Actually, it's grown on me over time, and I actually do like to use it. But the 7 being on the bottom, the 3rd inversion, it's quite unstable. It's kind of doesn't really sit there that nicely as much as one of the other notes on the bottom. But here's that original voicing. So if you wanted to practice something like this, and again, this one, I'm showing you these just for the process, but this is not ideal. This is not easy technique-wise. And this is not easy technique-wise, so do it with other voicings for yourself. You know, what I'd like you to do is work on the process and not just try to, learn specific shapes that someone shows you. So again, once you map something out, trying to bounce between the inversions, if you do want to review it as a vocabulary set of chords that you want to have in your hands and ready to use, then that's a good way to do it. Let's just look at one more thing. If you do take a big E chord and you say, well, how am I going to invert that? Take any 1, 3, 5 portion of it. Now, I'm not saying you won't get stuck. You might get stuck sometimes and be like, how am I going to play that? But if you take a 1, 3, 5 version of it somewhere, you should find all the shapes that are the inversions of that iteration of the chord. So if this is 5, 1, 3 of E, well, then you're going to get a nice 1, 3, 5 here, and you're going to get a nice 3, 1, 3, 5, 1 here, and then you get back to the original shape. Okay, if I take 1, 3, 5 of this whole big chord, 1, 3, 5, well then I'm gonna get a nice 3, 5, 1 here, a nice 5, 1, 3 here, and back to the 1, 3, 5 here. And these are existing in all of your common chord shapes, all over the place. Okay, if I take the top three, 3, 5, 1, this is the top 3 strings of this big E chord shape, I'm once again going to get nice playable voicings that you can start to see. And actually, the first thing we did was the D shape on the top 3 strings. Well, these, if you take that E chord, you need to do this. Well, that's that D shape right there. You're getting all the same voicings. Here's that other one that we already found on the D chord. And then this is one that we used on the D chord as well. So there's only so many, and you'll start to see them repeating themselves. So, okay, so that's it. Lots of examples there, and I think that the initial process should make sense now, and that's really the main thing I wanted to make sure I got across to you. So finding just the notes you need, 1, 3, 5 or 1 through 5, 7 in whatever order, and then on each string you move up to the next possible chord tone, and you do that until you find that shape. Yes, if you want those shapes in your playing ready to go or ready to see, then do that kind of vocabulary technique thing where you jump between them. But the practice that I think, the thing to practice that I think is the most game-changing is the ability to do that thinking process quickly, right? So it's okay if it's hard and takes a while, but our instinct is to kind of take a long time on something and then say, okay, now I just got to repeat it to get it down so it's ready. But then you lose that mental ability to have found it quickly. So if every month or so you work out something, it's a big brain buster, it's hard, and then you just get your hands to memorize it, you lose how you got there in the first place. So if you can practice just a new one, do a new one, do another one, do another one, and you're actually practicing the process, you are giving yourself something way, way, way more powerful than if you mastered 3 new inversion voicings on the guitar and you can just jump to them, but kind of lost that ability to see how they're connected and how to get to them quickly, right? So it's totally the teaching yourself to fish instead of just getting a fish or being given one. So that is my recommendation for that, and that's how that works. Let me know if you have any thoughts or comments, if there's a way that you've found or worked on inversions that you like, and if you've tried this and you feel like it's effective or a cool way to start to understand something that you're maybe wanting to work on. I'd love to hear from you anytime. That's it for this lesson, and I hope to see you in another one soon, and happy practicing.